seconds tips.
They're very professional. I was not expecting this at all.
It's a whole setup. My name is Vincent Desmarais-Adam. I'm a senior associate at Porter O'Brien.
There's a lot happening in the world.
There is a lot happening in the world right now. It's great for business.
I could see that, but what is your political hot take in this moment? You've worked in politics, you're now supporting on the consulting side, so tell me about it.
Yeah, I think my political hot take is Carney's honeymoon is going to be longer than I think people expect. Usually, after a year and a half, things starts to come up, scandal, policy crisis starts to arise. And we are not really seeing that lately. And I think him and his team have been pretty good in framing his leadership around his strengths when it comes to economical uncertainty, global certainty. And that resonates a lot with Canadian, and I think we see it in the poll. And a year in his term, I don't think we've seen any major political mishaps and policy crises. So I think he's in it for a bit of a long honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, I think continuing on a bit of that hot take, it was originally voted as a minority government.
Yeah.
We just saw yesterday an NDP has also crossed the floor from Nunavut, in addition to 3 other Conservatives who've crossed in the last few weeks. How have you been feeling about this? You said chaos is good for business.
Chaos is good for business. A majority government is good because it brings certainty. And at a time where we are, with everything's happening in the world, with the trade war we're having in the United States, the situation in the Middle East, I think business are looking for certainty and clarity, and a majority government provides that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see, though, with the 3 upcoming by-election, is it going to be a clean majority at 172, or we're going to have a little bit of a wiggle room at 173, which gives a little bit more of kind of a leeway for the government.
So you've worked in both a majority Liberal government and a minority Liberal government. What did you say the biggest differences or challenges are? And the reason why I asked that is let's talk politics. I'm trying to break down the understanding of politics. So, from your experience of working on the parliamentary affairs, kind of seeing how policy gets done, what did you notice the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think on the policy front, there's not much difference. It's really much in Parliament. Mm-hmm. How quickly can you move a legislation to committee really depends on how you control the committee. Well, once you have a majority government, you have the majority on the committee.
Yeah.
So bills can go faster through the committee process, through the clause by clause. It's easier in the House. You have a better grip and a better control over the legislative agenda, which allows the government to then prioritize his legislative agenda.
Yeah.
So I think for the regular Canadian, it's not so much of a difference. It's really in the nitty-gritty of the parliamentary system that then it gives you additional tool and additional resources that you may not have in a minority government.
Mm-hmm. Good points. And again, we're seeing what's going to happen with these by-elections. But what are you saying to your clients when they say, what does this mean with these floor crossings? Is this more, do you think, from a business perspective, people are perking up? Do you think the public's aware of it?
First of all, is that provides you better clarity over the long run. Right? If the government lasts for 3 years, 4 years instead of 2, then that helps you shape how do you approach the government when you're going to ask for funding requests? How do you going to map out your strategic engagement? Who do you want to talk to? Versus in a minority government where then you're working with a much smaller runway to kind of get stuff done. We also tell our clients that whether you are in a minority government or a majority government, it changes a little bit of your, as I said, the runway of your engagement, but it doesn't necessarily change who you're engaging with. Ministers are still ministers, deputy ministers are still deputy ministers. We get a lot of emails and what does it mean for us now? And often you kind of have to say, well, currently it doesn't mean anything for you right now, right? So you kind of have to temper also a little bit of the excitement of the floor crossing.
Yeah, there's excitement and I think a level of also anxiety.
A little bit.
To your point about, we're talking about uncertainty and maybe a majority government gives that certainty, but how are you dealing with that anxiety from clients who want to do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, we have to be the voice of reason in the room. The clients wants to do everything all at once at the same time. And so it's also part of our responsibility as a consultant to be, this is all great. Now, what do you want to prioritize? You don't have to be on every front at the same time. You're spreading yourself too thin. And you kind of recenter the priority towards what's most important to them, and I think also what's most important to then achieve the most beneficial outcome that they're looking for. So sometimes it's just to be kind of the voice of reason and just kind of refocus everything together.
Yeah, very well said. And what files are you currently working on with your clients?
Yeah, so I'm currently mostly working on infrastructure and energy, which are two big files lately. Very interesting because resources and money is there, but you have a lot of people competing for the same amount of money. So it's how do you position your client files to then stand out, and how do you make sure that your client's project fully answer or fully fit within the government's initiative and the government's policy.
Yeah, very well said. And I love the point about energy. And that's been a big focus in a lot of my interviews is how are we utilizing that? How are we utilizing that as the buzzword right now is nation building?
Yeah.
So the federal government recently launched their defense industrial strategy, and critical minerals, building up our infrastructure and manufacturing power is really key to that. As we've been seeing this global instability, our relationship with the United States has really been crumbling. What did you find interesting about that strategy specifically? You come from working in the Minister of Natural Resources office. So tell me anything that stood out for you.
So I think what's interesting with both the critical mineral strategy and the defense strategy is that it is very shaped to make sure that Canada is not left behind, positioning our country not so much as a provider of raw material, but as a fully integrated supply chain when it comes to the critical mineral sector, right? The idea is to no longer be able to just extract a mineral and ship them away and then get them refined from abroad. It's to be able to extract a mineral here, transform them here, have a fully integrated supply chain, and then be able to sell the transformed product abroad and have this added value to the critical mineral. And it's the same with the defense strategy. It is made to create a fully integrated supply chain to make us less reliant to foreign market and more resilient.
And, from your perspective outside of government, infrastructure and building these facilities doesn't happen overnight.
It does not.
So what do you think is going to be realistic from this in a year from now? Because this strategy is a 10-year strategy.
Yeah.
So what insights can you share?
So the first point is to make sure that the client understand that the government is a big ship and moves very slowly, right? Like opening a mine is a 10 to 15 years process. It's making sure that the client understand that, but it's also to making sure that the client understand that for the mine to operate, you need infrastructure, you need roads, you need transmission line.
It's a whole system.
It's a whole system.
Yeah.
And those need to kind of happen in lockstep. So that way, by the time your mine is approved, then you already have the ecosystem surrounding your mine that helps support your operation. This is a long-term project, but there are so many other things that needs to happen at the same time. And I'm hoping that now with the new major project office, we see a better alignment between the regulatory process and what the industry needs. I think overall the industry is very interested in this new major project office because I think the intent is there. It's to reduce the paperwork, reduce the red tape, streamline approval process. I think we'll kind of have to see whether it achieves that because it's still a relatively new agency. Currently, I think there's cautious optimism. I think that's how I would frame it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is optimism. And this is another interesting conversation I've been having with my guests is we're seeing Carney create these separate institutions almost outside of the public service, which is interesting is there hopes that we are going to move forward at least quickly?
Yeah, I've always been very skeptical of government who creates agencies to solve problems.
Okay.
I will say, coming from the Office of the Minister of Natural Resources, I saw the red tape that some of those projects have to go through in all the loop. And then you have the environmental impact assessment and you have consultations. Then you have to deal with municipalities and provincial government. And some of those consultations are needed because you need the buy-in of Indigenous community. You need the buy-in of local community.
Yeah.
But is there a better way that you can do that?
Streamline
And I
it.
think, exactly. And some of those processes can happen simultaneously. They don't have to happen one after another. And I think the idea behind this agency is to not only streamline, but is there an element that can be done simultaneously and then save, 6 months to a year? And that can really make a difference when you talk about infrastructure project.
Let's shift then to the defense part of it.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you interested about it.
I am very excited about the defense strategy.
Okay.
Because I think on the long run, a properly implemented defense strategy is beneficial for the entire economy. Defense procurement and defense strategy is not only ships and fighter jet, right? It is semiconductor. It is smaller parts that are made often by small and medium-sized businesses across the country. Well-integrated defense strategy that is in lockstep with a long-term procurement strategy is beneficial for the economy. We'll see how it goes over the years, but I think if both of those are done concurrently and together, I think we can see significant economic benefit for the country.
Yeah, and I think procurement's a really fascinating piece, and especially when I talk to a lot of different consultants. We recently chatted with the VP at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. It was a big thing we talked about. How do you think they can make the procurement strategy more made in Canada? You mentioned there's challenges with red tape that you saw firsthand, but any insights around what that procurement could look like?
Yeah, a good procurement strategy is a procurement strategy that gives certainty and clarity over the long run. No one is going to go into investing significant amount of resources and money in building those defense capacity if you're unsure that you'll be able to then have a consumer at the end. I think the one thing the government needs to kind of focus on is that the current procurement strategy is very complex. Even for small and medium-sized businesses, trying to be a provider of services to the government is very complex.
Yeah.
And so how do you make sure that smaller business that are in the defense sector, that do the semiconductor, there's a business in Augsbury, they do the life jacket for fighter jet pilots.
Wow.
And so how do you make sure that this smaller size business can fully take part of that defense strategy and that defense procurement that we're talking about without necessarily having the capacity and the resources to have a consultant and manage all the hoops of the procurement process.
And even just trying to talk to government.
Yeah, which is very difficult. Focusing on that will be kind of the key pillar of a successful procurement strategy for the defense sector.